Welcome in to the Wednesday edition of the 14. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Blake Lovell joins me. Blake, we're going to go over the best players in the SEC today for our final rankings. But first, let's talk Final Four, not SEC related, but we talk basketball here, and I think most people are watching the Elite Eight. I thought Gonzaga last night, let's start with the Zags. Goodness gracious, I'm not saying Gonzaga didn't play hard, but that just looked like a team that knew it was going to win and had it on cruise control. The way they play basketball and make it look easy is just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, they're one of the best teams we've seen in a while. I think I know it's, again, in the social media era, we try to compare everything to everything else, but there's no reason to compare. Like, this is just, I think we just need to enjoy the fact that this is one of the greatest teams we've seen in a while. They will, if they pull this off, if they beat UCLA and they win the championship, this will go down as one of the best college basketball teams in history. Whether you want to believe that or not, like, that's just, we haven't seen, like, the numbers speak for themselves. We haven't seen teams go through a season and completely dominate the way that they've dominated. So, I just think that's it. Like, they have literally almost beaten everyone by double figures. However many straight now, 24 straight, I guess, by double digits they've won. And they've just done it convincingly for the most part. And, they're one of the best teams we've seen. And it's just a matter of seeing if they're going to be able to, run this to 32-0 and win the whole thing. And if they do, again, I think they will go down as one of the best teams in the history of the game. So
I stayed up to watch Michigan and UCLA also, which I didn't find to be compelling basketball particularly. But I guess at least if you're Alabama, maybe you feel a little better this morning.
Yeah, I think so. Even though you're probably still kicking yourself for missing as many free throws as you did. But, it's just, we see this sometimes. Like I said, it's almost fitting to have a decade later. We go from VCU doing it in 2011 from first four to Final Four, and now UCLA does it here in this setting, and it's the same situation. So sometimes you just, we could have never predicted this. UCLA came into this tournament losing 4 straight games. And there's anyone that had UCLA in the Final Four was either a UCLA fan or lying, like one of the two, because there was just no way anyone thought that this team was going to be able to run all the way to the Final Four the way they did. But, yeah, just the way they played, and I think you saw it. Like, when they can play their type of style, which is a grinded-out type of game where they play well defensively, they are pretty good, and they did that against Michigan. As we said, they did that for the most part against Alabama. They've done it pretty much in all the other games they played in this tournament. And Johnny Juzang, my goodness, we talk about the missing link, right, for Kentucky. If they had him on the roster this year, how different could things have looked? Because you just have someone that can just make shots at a very high rate, and he's just been fantastic to watch. But unfortunately, they're going to run into the Zags, and I will tell you right away, I was running to the betting app last night as soon as that line came out, which, think about that. The line opened at 13.5 in favor of Gonzaga. We're talking about a Final Four game here, and the point spread's probably going to wind up getting up to, I think it'll get to 15 or 16, just based on how much money the Zags are going to get behind them on this. But boy, that's just incredible to think about. We're going to have a Final Four game featuring a team that's going to be favored by probably 15 points. So,
yeah, and the power conference team will be the underdog
right.
to the not power conference team. But what was the stat? They've won how many in a row by double digits
I think it's 24 because
might be more than that.
I was going to say
it's 20-something.
Well, the only team, I think, if you go back to West Virginia, they beat West Virginia by 5. That was back on December the 2nd. I'm just looking down here. I don't think, they haven't had another single-digit game since then. Yeah, that's since West Virginia. So I think that's 24. Maybe it's more. I'm not sure. But quite a few, let's just say, in a row. Maybe it's higher. But any way you slice it, it's a lot of games they played and won by double digits. So, yeah, it's just impressive. It's as impressive as it gets. And for all the people who wanted to sit around and pick this team apart and say they haven't played anybody or anything else, I don't know what else they got to do at this point other than, I guess, they have to win it all as an undefeated team for people to actually look at them as one of the greatest teams ever. But I think even to this point, like they're still in that category. They have, I mean, they've beaten Iowa, they've beaten West Virginia, they've beaten Virginia, BYU 3 times, Kansas. I don't know, I don't know what else this team, could do, but that they haven't done to this point. Other than now, like we said, the goal is going to be to win it all. And I'm just sitting around again. I have nothing against Houston, I have nothing against UCLA, but man, Gonzaga, Baylor, national championship would certainly be something. So.
Yeah, West Virginia, I think that's the only time that Gonzaga did not win by double figures. That was game 3, so that would make 27 in a row.
There you go.
If my math is right here. So, yeah, and look, included in that, there's a bunch of top 25 Ken Pom wins by double digits. Iowa, Virginia, BYU, 3 times.
Yeah.
And there's some decent teams in the WCC, not, maybe NIT level type team, St. Mary's being one. I don't think they made the NIT, but anyway, you know what I'm getting at. Then they beat Creighton, beat a really good USC team, and again made it look easy. But yeah, what was the stat on Johnny Juzang? I think it was there's been 5 players that have scored whatever in their first 5 tournament games. I think here's what it was. He's 3rd on the all-time list in scoring in your first 5 NCAA tournament games. So, again, salt in the wound for Kentucky fans. But let's shift to the SEC. Before we get into Player of the Year stuff, anybody new on the transfer market? I think we said pre-show Omar Payne's there. I don't know if that's one we've talked about, so that's a loss for the Gators. Anything else of note that you're seeing in terms of player movement and coaching changes?
I mean, I just think it's just going to continue. There are some, like we said, it's so hard to even look towards next season because we don't have any idea what the roster is going to look like just because you just have so many different guys that are transferring. But, Omar Payne leaving Florida, like that's the 4th player, I think, at Florida to transfer. Missouri, I think, is having a somewhat similar situation, although, the Xavier Pinson, Mark Smith ones, those are, significant just in terms of guys that play a lot of minutes. But I don't know. Like, again, I don't ever know in the transfer situation anymore what it means. Like, should we really just turn this one way or the other and say it's either on the kid or it's on the coach for the reason kids train? I don't know. Like, I think that all the circumstances are different. And I think it's just sometimes maybe we lean so much in the direction of, well, it's got to be something that the coach has done to where these kids are just transferring because of the coach. I don't necessarily know if that's always the case. I just think that if you're a player that's sitting there kind of looking at your role on a team and you look out and say, well, this guy transferred from here and look at him. He's playing 38 minutes a game now somewhere, averaging 25 points. He's got all the attention on him. You see that, and all of a sudden that becomes appealing. And I'm not saying this is the case for any of these guys we've talked about, but I just think it's easy now to look from a player standpoint. Like, I don't think it's always just about the school or the coach or anything like that. I think sometimes it's just players are seeing so much opportunity out there, and they're seeing, the opportunity with the transfer rules loosening up a bit to go somewhere else, play right away, change the scenery, have a bigger role. Because guess what? Like it or not, most guys that come in that are recruited at the SEC level think that they have a chance to be the best player on the floor or the best player on their team and the guy that should take 15 shots a game. And look, like I said, I'm not directing this towards anyone that we've discussed thus far. It's just I think that's what's in the mind now, to where you can find opportunity elsewhere. And so when you have some of these exodus like this, where you have several players leave a team in an off season, I don't know if it's always just situation with the coaching staff or anything like that, but certainly I'm sure it plays a little bit of a role. But it's so hard to tell always with this stuff.
When are we getting a ruling on eligibility for next year?
I have no idea. It's asking, when's the NCAA going to do something? Who knows, right? Everybody thought the NCAA was going to, make these big decisions and transfers. Like, it's just, I have no idea. Like, I think they may have had a timeline somewhere, but I can't say that I trust them to stick to it whenever it's going to be. So
let's move on to Player of the Year discussion. We did our SEC 14, the 14 best players in the league, a couple weeks back, and let's revisit that. The season's over. I've said that I think that we should consider postseason stuff. I've got a list of about 24 players to consider for these here. In my mind, player of the year comes down between Moses Moody and Herb Jones. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Cam Thomas moved up that list for me, just in
Yeah,
terms of.
he would be my third. So maybe that's a third we consider. I think beyond that, I don't know that anybody else is
Yeah,
player of the year worthy.
no,
There's some other
I
really
agree.
great players, but yeah, I think it's those three.
No, I think Cam Thomas had such a strong finish to the year that I could, I could warrant him even back in towards the top, maybe even my top spot. I'm not gonna lie. I just think when you watch him play, it's just man, he just had a level that again a lot of players didn't have. And I know we talk about the overall stuff and everything, but yeah, I don't know, he just had a really strong finish. I thought to the end of the season, but overall, yeah, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with Moses Moody or Herbert Jones in that situation. So
Let's see. I mean, I thought that Moody had a shot maybe with the super game to get them to the Final Four, but he just didn't have a really good game, to be honest.
yeah.
And I don't want that to wait too much, but we came into this with Jones as one, and that's where I don't know. What do you think? If you had to choose between the two, where do you go?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is like Moses Moody's numbers wise, like his numbers were okay in the tournament, but I can't say that I ever felt like he had, one of those games where you just felt like he had just completely taken things over. And like, look, it didn't matter, right? I mean, maybe of course you would have loved to see it against Baylor because that would have given them a better chance to win. But for the most part, like they had other guys step up and they were still able to get to the Elite Eight, even with him maybe not having those 25 plus performances that we felt like maybe could have got to that level. Now on the flip side, Herbert Jones probably, we know like he didn't have a great game against UCLA, he didn't necessarily have a great game against Maryland. He was in foul trouble in that one. So I don't know. Like, I think you're always going to be able to look at this differently. And for me, it just comes down to the overall value to the team. And like I said, the best overall player, I get the recency bias and everybody say, oh, well, Herb Jones could make a free throw. Like this guy just, he lost us the game, the charges, all this other stuff. But I just think that's silly. I think there was so much more to that game than just Herbert Jones against UCLA. It's a coin toss, honestly, between these two. I think you could make a strong argument either way. I think it was kind of noticeable, though, that when Herbert Jones isn't on the floor sometimes, like you could tell that Alabama wasn't necessarily the same defensively. And his offensive numbers are what they are. Like, I don't think we ever expected this guy to be someone that was going to just be, scoring 25 a game or anything. That was never the expectation. So it's a tough call for me.
All right, let's lay out some numbers here. Moses Moody had a pretty significant edge in win shares over at College Basketball Reference, 5.2 to 5.3. Offensively, I think Moody had the better year. Offensive rating, according to Ken Palm, Moody was 116, Jones was 103. Let's see. Points per 70 possessions, Moody 19.2, Jones 15.4. Effective field goal percentage, Moody 52, Jones 48. Free throw percentage, Moody 81, Jones 71. True shooting percentage, Moody 59, Jones 54. Let's see what else here. Assist to turnover, Jones had a small edge, 1.2 to 1.0. So offensively, I think an assist, okay, big edge to Jones here, 4.5 to 1.8. Again, he turned it over more too, so there's that. But I think we can say that Moody was the better offensive player. Is that fair? I mean, at least according to the numbers, he was.
Oh, he's the better offensive player. I don't have any reservation about that. Yeah, he was definitely a better offensive player.
Okay, so now it comes down to defense, okay? And I know defense is more than numbers. Alabama was a better defensive team.
Yeah.
And I think that has to factor in. I don't know how you divide the credit for team defense and give it to individuals, but I think Nate Oates would say that Jones was their best defender. I think that would be fair. I mean, he was the defensive player in the league, right?
Yeah, he's one of the best defensive players in the country, so I don't think there's any doubt about that. Yeah.
Right. So steals per 70 possessions, Jones exactly double, 2.4 to 1.2. Blocks, again, double, 1.5 to 0.7. I know Jones did foul a good bit more, 3.9 to 2.6. And again, not that this is all numbers, right? But I like what we can quantify as a basis of comparison. So here's another thing, Blake. Uh, Moody plays 1,082 minutes, Jones 902. So it wasn't just the fact that what they did per minute, he was on the floor a lot more. So
Yeah.
with that, I don't know. I mean, Jones feels to me like the player of the year was the best player on the best team. You can say he had a lot of help, but you can also say that about Moody. I'm going to leave it to you to make the decision here, because I could really argue either way. I think you probably saw both those guys more than I did.
Well, I mean, I guess to me at this point, it's we ranked Herbert Jones one in let's see, when did we do the last one? End of February, right? Did Moses Moody do anything to completely overtake that discussion? I don't.
I don't
I
think
don't
so. I
think
mean,
so.
and Jones was
But
really good in the NCAA tournament up until the last game.
yeah, I was gonna say, and I mean, again, and I don't think Herbert Jones was necessarily perfect either in terms of some of the things he did, but both their teams got a long way, and I know, I could understand like Arkansas fans say, well, Arkansas got further in the tournament and all that, but I just think that's not the discussion we're having. We're having it just on a player level, and I get it. Like we said, I mean, Herbert Jones he's pretty good down the stretch. Like I think he had some pretty good games there, and if you just look at it overall, like the guy just he does so many things, and I keep going back to this, and I know people want to just look at the numbers, but he does a lot of things too that don't necessarily show up in terms of the numbers. And so I would stick with him just because I don't think that they're, and not taking anything away from Moses Moody, but I just don't think there was anything I thought to make the switch just between the two. So,
Well, I think the most compelling thing was that Moody was on the floor more. And I did think your ability to stay on the floor speaks to your value. But I'm with you. I think that Jones's team won the regular season title. It won the tournament title. They advanced exactly the same in the NCAA tournament. I think I'm comfortable with that too. I don't think it's an easy decision, but I think we'll go Jones 1, Moody 2. The next one, to me, I think it's probably Cam Thomas, right?
yeah, I don't have any reservation unless the only other player I can make the case for would be Trey Mann, but I think I would still put Cam Thomas ahead of him. So,
Well, I might say Drew Smith too.
yeah, I guess.
I think Mann's a better player in terms of talent, but Drew Smith, goodness gracious, that guy did an awful lot. I think he made all defensive team, and I don't think that Mann did.
Well, exactly, and that's what I was going to say. Like a lot of this, when you start to change your opinion, I think it's based on like we saw sort of the finish that Trey Mann had to the season, and we remember how bad Florida looked in their loss to Tennessee when he didn't play. He had 20-point games. I mean, he scored 19 or more, I think, in I want to say 5 of their last 7 games. Had the 30-point game against Tennessee. A guy who he rebounded actually pretty well for a guard. A lot of assists. You talk about guys on the floor too. Like he rarely came off the floor for them. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, we had Drew Smith ahead of him before. And I don't, my opinion on Drew Smith hasn't changed. I think we were probably higher on Drew Smith than a lot of other people were, but that's I think it's a little bit closer than probably I would have had it initially. So I'm fine either way.
Let's see. Yeah, because I think to me that the top 5 are fairly clear. It's Moody, Jones, not in that order, and Smith, Mann, and Thomas, right?
Yeah.
We're going Thomas 3. Let me. I'd have to think about this because I'm like you. I've gone both ways, right? Because I think that there's an argument either way. Here's another thing, and I know Florida didn't. Well, I guess if you look at minutes per game, it's not an issue. Florida just didn't play as many games as Missouri, and I don't think that's necessarily Trey Mann's fault, right?
Yeah. And again, Trey Mann did miss a game down the stretch. Now, how much does that factor in? I mean, I think it factors in just in the fact that, his team was pretty awful without him. But I mean, I think if, Drew Smith didn't play in one of those games too for Missouri, like you probably would have saw, I think, the same scenario where Missouri probably would have looked pretty bad too. So
offensive numbers, man, these guys are a lot alike. Offensive rating for Smith was 109. For Mann, it's 110. Shooting percentages almost identical. Man shot a little better from the floor. If you account for the three, man scored more, man rebounded more. Smith was better with the ball. Man fouled more. Smith, statistically, the better defender, also made all SEC team defensively, and man didn't. So
I think unless we can convincingly change it from what we had before, which before we had Drew Smith 4 and Trey Mann 5, right?
yeah.
So I think we would just leave it in that scenario. Or no,
Yeah.
actually we had Trey Mann 6. We had him behind Scottie Pippen. I would move Trey Mann ahead of Scottie Pippen for me. But.
Yeah, I would too. I don't have a lot of qualms about moving man ahead of Pippen. So yeah, I'm with you. So we're going Jones, Moody, Thomas, Smith, man, and I think we're both pretty comfortable with that. So next guy to me probably comes down to Darius Days, Scottie Pippen Jr., maybe Jaden Shackelford or John Petty.
Yeah, I think I would still, and again, I know the Pippen situation, but I still feel like he was really good overall. Yeah. But I would probably keep him up there. But I think a guy like Shackelford, he didn't. I mean, we said it. He didn't have a great game against UCLA. That was a little disappointing. But really, aside from that, though, like he's still pretty good. Like, I mean, he still had a pretty nice finish to the season. Again, he didn't have a great game against UCLA. Didn't necessarily, have his same type of scoring game against Tennessee there several weeks before. But overall, like I don't know. I feel like he's probably up there too. But I would probably still put Scottie Pippen ahead of the rest of the group. So
Days had an offensive rating of 128. Pippen was 109.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we said
Days rebounded a lot. Now, look, Pippen scored a lot more, right? Sometimes offensive rating is helped by the fact that you're not taking a tremendously high volume of shots, I guess is a good way to put it. So, in other words, it's harder to be your team's go-to guy.
Well,
especially when you don't have a surrounding cast, which Days has got and Pippen does not.
Well, here you go. Like our trend held together for Darius Days in that when he scored 11 or more, LSU was, what did they wind up being? I want to say they wound up being 19-1 when he scored, or 18-1, something like that. 19-1, I think, when he scored 11 or more. And guess what? In the 2 games they lost down the stretch, which was to Alabama in the championship, he only had 2 points. Game they lost to Michigan, he only had 6 points. So they wound up going 1 I don't even know. No, they were 19. I don't remember. It's something crazy. Like, it's one of those wild stats where they only won, one game, I think, with him not scoring in double figures. Or no, actually, every game they won, he scored in double figures. So the ones he didn't, except for one, there you go. So pretty wild. So that just kind of shows you the value, I think, of Darius Days to LSU. So that's another interesting one. I think, like you said, if you dig a little bit deeper on him, he was so valuable to that team, but he didn't have the best finish either overall. So
now they stunk defensively too, LSU.
Well, yeah,
and Pippen is not. Pippen will get some steals, but he's not what I would call a great defender.
Yeah.
I think he picks his spots.
Yeah.
Well, he can get a steal and maybe an easy turnover, and then sometimes maybe the effort isn't there quite so much.
Look, I think there's a clear top 5, and I will say that. Like, I don't know if we were sold on that before, but like, I think there's the top 5 are pretty clear, and now I think we're kind of in that area where you can sort of pick apart some of the things, beyond Trey Mann there at number 5. So it's I think it's sort of a pick and choose what you want to value in these spots. So
okay, let me give you a Pippen Cam Thomas comparison, because Cam Thomas in our mind, best offensive player in the league, right?
Yes.
True shooting percentage, Thomas 56, Pippen 58. Points per 70 possessions, Thomas 26.1, Pippen 26.3. Rebounds, almost identical. Pippen had, almost 4 times the assists. Pippen had a better assist-to-turnover ratio, 1.3 to 0.9 compared to Thomas. Defensively, neither of them, again, much to write home about, but in terms of steals, Pippin got twice as many when he was on the floor. I think, to me, Pippin, you've got to consider the burden was on him a lot of nights to keep them in games. That wasn't the case for either the next 4 or 5 people we're talking about. And again, to the victors go the spoils, right? I don't think that you penalize guys like Shackelford and Petty and Days because their teams won. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I think you put Pippin on another team, and he's still a great ball player. And I guess those other guys are really good too. I just think that what he did was pretty loud on a team where he had one other guy that you could count on to help him, and that was it.
Yeah, and that's why I think I'd be fine with putting Pippin at 6. And even, maybe Darius. I don't know. Like, again, I would like Pippin and Darius Days, I think, are pretty set there at 6 and 7. I think it's just a matter of what order you want to put them in. I would probably put Pippin at 6 for me, but
yeah, I'm with you. I think Pippin, the more I look at this, has got a pretty good case for 6. I think Days is 7, and then it's Shackelford or Petty. Petty played more minutes. I think we had Shackelford ahead last time.
What? Did we? I don't know if we did. No, I think we had. No, we had Petty at 9 last time. We had Shackelford at 14. So,
Okay.
That's an interesting one because I think I would. I mean, John Petty's good, but I honestly don't know that I wouldn't pick Shackelford. But that's another one. I don't know. Like that's one I would probably need to dissect a bit more to figure that out. But I don't know. Like Petty obviously brought value as a guy who did a little bit of rebounding too. Obviously, we know his 3-point shooting. He played a lot, but I mean Shackelford just not having that great game, I think against UCLA is probably one that stands out a bit. But beyond that, like if you look at the numbers, like that dude was pretty good. So yeah, that's a tough call for me.
Yeah, I mean, again, same team. Petty's on the floor more, 1,002 minutes to 969. I think that says a little something, but it's so close. I mean, that's a minute and a half a game. Petty shot the ball better a little bit. Shackelford actually scored more per minute. Petty rebounded a little better. My dog is very fired up about this discussion, by the way. Statistically, Petty defended better, blocked a good bit more shots, had a few more steals, fouled a little bit more. Shackelford was a little bit better with the ball. I mean, I think this is almost a flip a coin.
We can go Petty and Shackelford after that. That's fine with me. So
yeah, and I think we had it. That's the way we had it last time, right?
We just had a bigger discrepancy between the two. We had Petty at 9 and Shackelford at 14. So
yeah, I mean, and Shackelford was a guy that took over some games for them at times, but you saw Petty do that too. I mean, he was a guy that when they needed a big shot, a lot of times the ball was in his hands, and maybe that just depends on matchups and who's guarding who or what they're playing. But I mean, I think I'm fine with either way. So we're going to go Petty 8, Shackelford 9.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I know he didn't play in 3 games, but I honestly think that maybe this is where we start to make the case for Javon Quinterly being much higher. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but just watching them play, like I felt like he was. I mean, Herbert Jones was important. Petty and Shackelford were important, but like, if you want to talk about the guy that kind of was the driving force for them in SEC play, a lot of times, he was right there. I don't know if maybe I'm not giving Quinterly enough credit to be higher on this list. So,
yeah, I mean, the way that he played at the end, I felt like he became more important to them, but it's also a season-long thing too. And those other guys played 200 to 250 more minutes, and I think that has to count. I mean, that's like 5 full 40-minute games, right?
Yeah, I guess on the flip side, though, like he put up a lot of production even in not playing the same amount of minutes. I'm going up and down the line here. Like I'm looking at just random games, like 22 points in 19 minutes. Let's see, 16 points in 21 minutes, 13 points in 23 minutes. You just keep going up and down the line. 18 points in 24 minutes. He also had 4 assists, 4 rebounds. Like, I don't know. Like that's an interesting one to me because I get it. Like, don't get me wrong. Like the minutes stuff, that's obviously important. You need to be on the floor a lot, but I almost feel like he became kind of he's pretty solid for them down the stretch. I mean, he became kind of a rock that they could lean on in a lot of different spots. But we'll see. We'll see where he winds up.
Yeah, and I think let's clear something up too. I think this list is who delivered the most value this year, right? I mean, that's really what we're getting at. We can say best players, and maybe that's a little different because if we were picking up sides for a team, you have the ability to coach your team, and I have the ability to coach mine, and we can use players in different ways. And I'm not saying that doesn't come into play, but the way I think about it is who had the most value. And if a couple guys are playing a lot more minutes on the same team, to me, that's a statement. I think that, yeah, the way Quinterly popped down the stretch stood out to me too. But if you're looking at full body of work, and win shares has got it this way. Win shares has got Petty at 3.7, Shackelford at 3.8. So it's interesting. Hadn't even looked at that till just now. But they saw those two guys as almost identical too.
Yeah, I mean maybe we should have done it that way. Maybe we should have drafted our teams, built our 8-man rosters or something, and tried to figure out who would he pick as our coaching style. But no, I get it. I was just kind of pointing out that I do think Quinterly. I don't know. I just feel like he was one that did the most with what the opportunity he had, and I thought he became one of the most important players on that team down the stretch. So yeah, that's I get it. Like I said, it's a season long thing. So.
Yeah, I think we table Quinterly for a while. I just can't go ahead of those other two based on the minute stuff. But let me ask you something else, though. Do we consider a Javonte Smart, a Schuler? I think we underrated Colin Castleton maybe a little bit the last time. Justin Smith is a guy we've talked about. Jeremiah Tillman, a guy we had, I think, up in that range the last time. Would you go that the Alabama guys 8 and 9?
Yeah, I would probably still put them in that list. I mean, I don't know. Like Devontae Shuler, to me, I could still probably make the justification that. I mean, I don't like Justin Smith though. Like the more I think about it, I mean, Justin Smith, I think was pretty. Man, he's pretty important to that Arkansas team. So, and that's what makes this hard is you're also tying it into success. And I think it's we look at it and. I mean, Justin Smith, I would probably put Justin Smith much higher, which we didn't even have him on our list last time, did we?
No, we did. I think he might make it this time.
Well, I don't think there's any might. I think if we're picking 14, I think he's got to be on there. So I think I would even consider him as high as 10, or even I can move him up right behind these two Alabama guys, to be honest with you, because I just think when you look at it overall, like the amount of value he brought to that team, I don't, and again, I know it's a season long thing and he didn't play in 4 games and that's going to make the minutes look a little bit different, but down the stretch, like he was playing 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. He played all 40 minutes against Colgate. In the NCAA tournament, he played all but like 7 minutes. So yeah, I think Justin Smith has to be pretty high on that list.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, again, Petty, Shackelford, 8-9 to me. I do think you're right. I think the way that they didn't take him off the floor, you look at the team success, you look at the way that they defended, he was part of that. Yeah, I think it's almost a case of you almost have to justify what the other guys have done ahead of him at this point. I mean, Schuler's case, a lot of that's defense, right?
Yeah.
And Arkansas was a better defensive team than Ole Miss. And if you get down to offensive players, I think Smith was better than Schuler. So, I don't know. To me, I think I can slot Smith at 10, and I think we make a pretty convincing case for that.
Yeah, I think he's right there. I could even make the argument to put him ahead of one of the Alabama guys, but I'm fine with leaving it as is. But yeah, I think he's got to be in the top 10 to me, just based on how he played. So yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, so if we're going to put Smith at 10, who do we go next? Do we go Days? We kind of haven't talked about.
Oh, I forgot Days wasn't even. I forgot we didn't put him anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, I think Days would be at 11 for me. Yeah, I think that's probably where I would go next.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Days at 11, and I think you're right on that. Gosh, it's getting tough. There were, like I said, there weren't a lot of just guys that had eye-popping stats that made it easy, like you have some years, right?
Yeah.
But you had a lot of really good players. And there could be some guys that are really good players that don't get talked about much for this list because we're selecting 14, but that's just the way it was in the league this year.
Yeah, it was, and I mean, I think at this point, as I look at it, I feel like Javonte Smart. I mean, look, I know we're loading up here on Alabama, Arkansas, LSU, but like I feel like it's hard to keep Javonte Smart off this list too. So I don't know. I feel like he's got to be somewhere pretty soon, like if not the next one. So. I mean, this guy he wasn't like he was playing. I mean, you talk about minutes played, like this guy was the rock. Like he was never coming off the floor. And, he wasn't just scoring either. He was rebounding, assists, steals. Like he did so many different things. So I don't think he can go much lower for Javonte Smart either. So,
well, we haven't talked much Jeremiah Tillman.
Still think I would put Javonte Smart ahead of him, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion, but again, like we said, so many different things go into this, but I don't think I could put Javonte Smart lower than Jeremiah Tillman.
Well, and if you look at team stuff, we can knock them for the defense, but bottom line is even with that, they were still good enough to get there.
Right, and I think it's also value to the overall team. And look, Jeremiah Tillman, as we said, with Missouri could be a different team at times whenever he wasn't on the floor, but I still think Javonte Smart was the more impressive player overall to me. Even with the players he had around him, I still think he probably belongs higher on the list. But
by the way, one guy we had in this range last time was Dylan Dessou at Vandy. I kind of dropped him from consideration because he missed the last several games, and of course Vanderbilt was pretty bad. So I think that's one that people are wondering we can eliminate. So we've gone, let me see if I've missed somebody. Jones, Moody, Thomas, Drew Smith, Mann, Pippin, Petty, Shackelford, Justin Smith, Days, Smart, in that order, or do we have Days ahead of Smith?
I would.
And did I miss somebody?
I'd probably put Smith ahead of Days, but
okay, so Smith would be 9.
Yeah.
Days 10, Smart 11.
I think that's right.
Although Smart played a lot more minutes.
I think we had Smart higher. Did we have him Smart? Yeah, we had Smart way higher last time. We had him 3 spots ahead of Days last time. So I
think you gotta flip it based on how much he was on the floor.
Yeah, so we're keeping Smart ahead of Days. Yeah, just like we had him last time. Yeah.
So Devontae Shuler. So Days at 11. We got Shuler. My guys that I think we look at are Shuler, Castleton, Tillman, Trenton Watford, Romello White, and then maybe my next group would be Romello White, Iverson Molinar, Jalen Tate, Quinterly, maybe Jaden Springer, although I think the way Tennessee finished kind of drops him from that. Maybe Alan Flanagan, if we want to revisit that. We talked about him a little bit last time. And then to me, it gets to be it's tough to make a case, I think, for anybody else. So we got 3 left.
Well, the problem is, like, for me, it's really hard to keep out the teams that made a run in the tournament. Like, it's hard to look at those players and just say, all right, I can't. It's hard for me just to dismiss like what a Trenton Watford did down the stretch, because what we had him last time. Let's see, we had him 13 last time. Obviously the 30-point game against Alabama is going to stand out, but for the most part, he wasn't that bad elsewhere, and he had some pretty significant performances. So, like, that's another one. It's like we're just loading up here. I know with the top teams, but it's hard to kind of look beyond that. We had Devontae Shuler at 7 last time. How much further down, I guess, do we want to put him? Just based on, did he really have, such a finish that would push him further down? But I don't always think it's just about that guy either. It's about what other guys do around him. And, overall, I mean, it's not like Devontae Shuler had a bad finish to the season. I just think we don't view it in the same sort of lens because, they didn't play in the NCAA tournament and they only played 2 games in the SEC tournament. And so I don't know, I still think overall Devontae Shuler was probably one of the best players in the league. So I don't know how comfortable, it would be to move him much further down, even though maybe his numbers weren't to the level of some of these other guys.
One more thing I want to bring up, and I'll circle back to him. All defensive team this year: Herb Jones, Isaiah Jackson, Abdul Adu, Drew Smith, Eve Pons. So we've already got 2 all defensive players in there, and I don't think any of the rest belong. In fact, I don't see it at all. So just as kind of a housekeeping item, I wanted to bring that up. Yeah, I mean, look. Now we're getting into a point where the guys that are left, right? If you're looking at Schuler, Castleton, Tillman, Watford, Romello White, Jalen Tate again, Quinterly, maybe 2 more. You're getting into team success, right? You've got Castleton, Tillman, Watford. Their teams all made the NCAA tournament. Again, maybe they had a better supporting cast too. But I don't know. I mean, again, if you're 16, 17, 18, that doesn't make you a bad player, right? Or it doesn't mean you didn't do some good things. Yeah. This is really tough. I don't know. Schuler is not a super efficient offensive player. His percentages in terms of the guys we're looking at are some of the worst on the list. No, defensively, he was good. He got some steals. I thought he made Ole Miss go. But bottom line is that was an NIT team. And again, Romello White, I think, had a big factor in what they did too. I don't know. I'm starting to think that maybe, you look at Castleton, Tillman, Watford. Those are 3 teams that got to the tournament, while those other guys didn't. Yeah, and then again, it's do you find room for Tate, Quinterly, those guys in there too?
Yeah, that's the thing is. It's almost like doing this now, we can't just ignore the NCAA tournament aspect or the conference tournament aspect of the stuff that some of these guys did. And I think that's, for me, that makes it easier to look at guys like Trendon Watford, just ones like that we've seen have some of these, like you said, maybe a Jalen Tate or someone, Quinterly, I mentioned him earlier. It's just, I mean, we have to think about it overall, I know, but where we had these guys last time and how have they put themselves, what position have they put themselves in since we talked about them last? And I feel like Trendon Watford's probably someone that's only increased his value since the last time we had this discussion. We had him at 13 last time. Quinterly, as we said, he wasn't on our list, but I think he's certainly in the conversation. Tate wasn't on the list. He's in the conversation. But they also play for the top 3 teams, and the 3 teams that won NCAA tournament games had strong finishes in the conference tournament. And so that, it makes it hard to kind of juggle that compared to, Jeremiah Tillman and guys like that. So it's a tough, there's no science to this. And so it's just hard to, I think, differentiate. It's just a matter of what you value, I think, overall.
Let's work at it from the other way. I think you got, again, maybe 9 or 10 guys for the last 3. You've got win shares. Who's got 3 guys we haven't gotten to yet: Romello White, Iverson Molinar, Toulouse Smith. Those were all top 10 in the SEC win share guys, but none of their teams made the tournament. So I think that matters. I think Jalen Tate was really good, but I don't think he's one of the 14 best players in the league. I think Quinterly was really good. In fact, if we're picking, 14 players, I might take him. But again, he lagged some of the other guys on his team in minutes. We can get this 2 ways. We can go, okay, who's the guy that if I took him out of consideration, you would just say we really made a mistake at? In other words, if I took him away from an option. Okay, so Watford.
He's got to be on there to me. I think he's just. Okay. I think he's got to be on the list. If you look at minutes, played 35 minutes a game. There's a lot. He did a lot of things. He was a better offensive player than defensive player. There's no doubt about that. But I just think that he's someone that I would have a hard time saying if I had to pick my 14 best players, he would have to be on that list to me. So.
Well, look, he did everything.
Yeah.
He passes, he takes care of the ball, he rebounds, he scores, and like you said, they got the tournament. So to me, that's our 12.
Yeah, he's got to be on there. So.
Okay, so we got 2 spots left. To me, it's probably Schuler, Castleton, or Tillman.
Yeah.
Again, I think White and Molinar have got cases. Maybe Tate and Quinterly and Springer, maybe Alan Flanagan, but I think that further down we get, the more stretch it becomes. I think, and you and I differ on this guy, right?
I know
But
you're going to
Colin
talk
Castleton,
about, yeah.
well, yeah, you do, and win shares per minute in the league, and again, I'm not saying that's the gospel. Colin Castleton did better in win shares per minute than any player in the conference this year. He led the league, I think, in block rate. He came up big for Florida a lot of nights. He shot the ball really well from the field, 60% effective field goal, 78 from the line. He rebounded almost 10 per 70 minutes. Now, the knock on him is he only played 616 minutes. Of course, Florida had fewer games, and that's part of it. I don't know. To me, Castleton was an All-SEC player by the coach's second team. I think that's one where I'm higher on him than you are, and this is just difference of opinion. But to me, he's one that I have a hard time leaving off.
So you would put him over Tillman?
I think I would.
Okay.
Tillman, one thing about Tillman too is, and I love the player, great story. He cost his team at times with foul shooting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I get it. Like, and again, I have nothing against Colin Castleton. I just think that, I don't know. There's non-stats parts of this too, where I just look at it and I try to compare, and it's not easy to do. But I'm with you. I think because Castleton had a pretty strong finish, you could make the case that, we could put him on this list, whether that's 13 or 14. I'm not against that because he did. I mean, he was the big reason why they won that Virginia Tech game with how he played.
Yeah, that was the next thing I thought he played really well at a time that was a close game. They needed big baskets. I mean, you look at him, there's nothing here that he does poorly. Okay, he turns the ball over a little bit, but that's common for big men. He scored well. He rebounded well. He was maybe the best shot blocker in the league. Got a handful of steals, didn't foul inordinately. Again, shot the ball well from the field and the line. I just think he was a really solid player, and I think I feel about him the way that you do about Watford. To me, he's kind of hard to leave off the list.
Okay, well we will put him on there, and now try to figure out the last spot.
Schuler, Tillman, Romello White to me, maybe Iverson Molinar.
I think if we're looking at this overall, I mean, there was a reason we had Devontae Schuler at 7 last time, right? Like, right. Did he do anything that poorly in the last month of the season to justify him being completely off the list? I don't think so.
No, I mean, they didn't jump up and seize a bid when they had a chance.
Right, and I mean, look, he turned the ball over a bit, I mean, in some of those games, but I just look at it as, what were their other options? He was the guy that had to play all the minutes. He's the guy that had to handle the ball. They didn't have a lot of other options, really just consistently. So for me, and as I said, I've got nothing either against Jeremiah Tillman, but I don't think I could justify moving Devontae Schuler if we had made the argument, which I think we had decided to put him ahead of Javonte Smart, John Petty, Tillman, Darius Days, Dylan Dessou, Trendon Wofford, and Jaden Shackelford the last time we did this a month ago. I don't think there's anything he's done to move him that many spots back to where he's not even on the list. But I think it's just, like we said, it's a product of they didn't make the tournament. We didn't have, he didn't have the opportunities that some of these other guys had. But, I guess on the flip side, you could, partially blame him for that, I guess, if you want to say, well, maybe if he's a little bit better here or there, they had a chance. But I don't know that because, as we said, that team was just inconsistent. And I would have a hard time leaving him off the list, I think, honestly.
Yeah, I guess the other argument I would make is, does Romello White have a better argument than he did? White had a better offensive rating, was a whole lot more efficient from the field. And of course, they're different players, so they do different things. His job was to rebound and protect the rim, which I thought he did pretty well. But Schuler played more minutes. And like you said, we had Schuler in there the first time. It's not like we haphazardly did this the first time around. I love the way that Schuler really closed out on shooters and things like that. You're probably right. If we had him in there the first time, we got to find reason to move him out or guys that moved ahead of him. And I think we did find a couple of guys to move ahead of him. But I think you're right. I think he's the the last guy who belongs in here, probably.
Yeah, I wouldn't really make the argument for Romello White over him, because if you go back, I think, again, recency bias, which I'm sure we have some of by moving some of these guys up the way we have, but like Romello White wasn't great for a while there. Early on in SEC play, he didn't play well at all. So if we're looking at it overall, I think that's something to kind of consider too. He didn't sort of find his groove until probably the 1st of February. So yeah, that's something I would also throw out.
So our final 14 in order: Herb Jones, Moses Moody, Cam Thomas, Drew Smith, Trey Mann, Scottie Pippen Jr., John Petty, Jaden Shackelford, Justin Smith, Javonte Smart, Darius Days, Trenton Watford, Colin Castleton, and Devontae Shuler. We call that a wrap?
That's a pretty good group.
All right, I like it. Let's do power ratings quickly for teams. I think you got to go Alabama, Arkansas, right?
Yep.
LSU 3, Florida 4.
Yeah, LSU 3. Yeah, Florida's probably better. Yeah, they're better than Tennessee. I'll put them at 4.
Tennessee, Missouri.
Yeah, I would go. I guess we'll go Tennessee at 5, and Missouri at 6.
Yeah,
Tennessee is just, my goodness, it's just, I don't know with Tennessee, man. It's isn't it crazy to think about? They're gonna have 2 potential lottery picks, and they were just so bad offensively.
Oh, I know.
I just don't even. I can't.
And then not even that, they had the preseason SEC Player of the Year, according to some, who's not among those. And then you had Pons, who declared for the draft last year, didn't go.
Yeah, they're gonna, and their roster, we already talked about it, but my goodness, their roster is gonna look completely different next year.
Yeah.
All right, Tennessee 5, Missouri 6.
Ole Miss 7.
Yeah, I guess so. That's.
I mean,
right.
they were a bubble team for the last minute, and nobody else was. State or Kentucky?
Mississippi State.
Okay.
They got to the NIT championship game. That's the opportunity you're afforded. You get to move up in our rankings if you get to the NIT title game. So,
who we got left? Auburn, Georgia.
Yeah, I would put Auburn, then Georgia.
I would too, because Auburn didn't have Cooper the whole year.
Yeah, Auburn, Georgia. I would put Vanderbilt ahead of.
I know they finished last, but I'm with you. I think the way they finished, Vandy 11.
A&M, I think after that, I'd put South Carolina last, which I know sounds interesting, but I just don't. Right? Or am I wrong about that? Or is A&M last?
Ken Palm goes South Carolina, A&M, Vandy. But I thought A&M at the end of the year, and again, you had the big COVID pause in there, looked better to me, looked more competitive than Carolina. Carolina just, I don't know if it's fair to say mailed it in, but my goodness.
They just never got back on track after that month layoff. I think it's pretty clear. So I think I'm good with putting South Carolina last, just because, like you said, and well, I don't know though. Is that fair? Just based on the fact that A&M didn't play for a month down the stretch either. I don't know. South Carolina though, they just got blown out. They were just getting blown out by teams. But they have I don't know. That's a flip a coin. I don't even make it. It doesn't matter. 13A and 13B with those two. I don't think that's a large discussion.
I think it's which shade of lipstick do you prefer on the pig, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's much of a choice with either one that you're going to be able to make a convincing argument. So there you go.
All right, you name it. Last 3 in order.
Vandy. Man. A&M, South Carolina.
Yeah, that's the way I feel too. Coach of the year, you got 2 obvious candidates. I think you have to go Oates.
Yep.
Just because they won both.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're both second-year guys, so they both kind of inherited the same spot, taking over for a coach who was fired because the programs were perceived as underachievers. And nobody else is in that discussion, I don't think. Although I do think that Mike White did a little bit of an underrated job, given all the issues they had with losing their best player and those sorts of things. I don't know that he gets enough credit. I mean,
he'd get more credit if they'd have beat Oral Roberts. We'd be having a different discussion. Fair or unfair.
If they beat Oral Roberts, he's not in the discussion anyway. I just thought that was a spot where he kind of deserves a little bit of a mention in my mind, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree based on the circumstances.
He was never going to crash the top 2.
Right.
I think even if they get to the Final Four, what those other two teams did in the regular season were so strong. But
Yep.
anything else we need to do in the wrap-up episode here as we tie up loose ends on the season?
No, I think that's it. Like we said, pretty strong year, I think, just for the teams at the top. If you look at the final conference standings, the Pac-12 has jumped all the way up to second in KenPom now, behind the Big Ten, where the SEC was pretty close up there behind the Big 12. But, that's, again, we look at it as a whole, too. And I think overall, you had some unique circumstances at different places, like we said, with the pauses and all this other stuff. Auburn had a unique season just based on, their ban and Sharif Cooper and that kind of stuff. Kentucky, certainly a season we did not expect from them. So, yeah, a wild year. And I think next year, though, just a matter of replacing the players you're going to lose to the NBA. And I think the SEC teams will have no problem, at least going out and getting some top transfers. We know they're going to get top freshmen. So I don't really expect the league to take any much of a step back or anything next year.
And speaking of Auburn, if people are wondering about Sharif Cooper, we didn't put him in the rankings. He just didn't play enough minutes.
Right.
And it's not fair to the guys who played 3 times as much as he did this year to kind of to leave them out. And it's also kind of not fair to Cooper to put him in there. I mean, we know, like, if we're choosing up sides, he'd be in that 14. But this is kind of about body of work. So in any case, all right, Blake, I think we're done with today. We'll do some baseball stuff tomorrow. You had some midweek action in the SEC. I don't think anything worth discussing today with that, though. We'll hit that with Barry tomorrow. So anyway, we'll have some content up at the 14. Tell folks where to follow us and maybe anything that you're working on that you've got coming up.
Yep, southeastern14.com. Check all that out there. And as you said, lots of stuff happening. All our baseball coverage over there. We'll have some football stuff coming. And I've got some basketball wrap-up stuff on the way too, with some ideas I'm working on that. So yeah, check everything out at southeastern14.com.
All right, for Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee, host of the Southeastern 14 podcast. Thank you for listening. We're coming back with more episodes on Thursday and Friday.